So, hey everyone, welcome to Wezesha Presents Demystifying AI. I'm here with Kehumba Deruto, like last time. This is the second session of the two-session series on demystifying AI. Those of you who don't know, I'm Ichi, and I host Wezesha. What is Wezesha? Wezesha is just a platform that people can use to get information, support, resources so that they can feel empowered. In a few words, the mission of Wezesha is empowerment through shared experiences. And part of the way we talk about empowerment through shared experiences is bring people to talk about their experiences and share them. And in doing so, help people feel empowered. I do want to plug in real quick that one of the things that has become a spin-off of Wezesha is this thing I'm calling Wezesha Academy. And it's a no BS approach to increasing your value worth. And what that means for those of you who are here now and those who will listen to the recording is there's a certain set of things that I believe are important to help you increase your value worth. And I call it the SMS. It's the skill set, the mindset, and strategy. And with Wezesha Academy, what we try and do is teach you those three things so that you can be able to articulate your value worth and be able to get that high income that you're looking for, part of which is upskilling, changing your mindset, and then being able to strategically articulate your value worth to get a good job. So if you want more information, go to wezeshaacademy.com, express interest, and I'll reach out to you. So with that PSA, Kehumba, tell us a little bit about yourself to remind the guests from last time and those who are here today. If you can find the unmute button, maybe AI should be unmuting for you.
Oh yeah, there you are. Even me, I'm muting myself. So Kehumba Derito, I'm a resident of this city for many years. I currently work at Kennesaw, more or less on the compliance side, nothing to do with computers and AI. So AI is just a side passion for me. I've always been passionate about technology, and actually a lot of people when they meet me they think I'm in computer science stuff, which I do, just that's all my day-to-day stuff. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I have I've done a little bit of AI. I did computer science. I taught for about a year or so, and that's where I got introduced to the early days of machine learning. I liked it. I took a little bit of a break, especially when COVID came, when I stopped teaching. But when AI came about, I've started to engage and actually realize how passionate I am about the topic. I've had a number of presentations, a seminar and conference, and I've realized that a lot of folks are not fairly attuned to what's going on with AI. And I think, I worry that if people don't, they're not aware, then they can't take advantage of what, the opportunity that's presented by AI, and they can also prepare for whatever possibilities or impact the AI might have on their career, their lives, and all that. So I think it is important for us to have these conversations.
Thank you. So, you mentioned something about your work doesn't necessarily map to AI, but I'm going to challenge you on that today. But before I challenge you on that today, let me sort of just debrief on some of the things that we talked about last week. So some of you may be using AI, may be very familiar with AI, some of you may not. And so one of the things that I tried to do was to summarize some of the discussions we talked about last week. And there's some words that may be new to you or may be interesting to you in the world of AI. On the left-hand side, data, that's referred to as AI's food. Those of us who have been in tech for a long time, we learned about data versus information. It's just raw information. So that's the food that feeds this machine that then allows, or that enables AI. Then the algorithms, this was from Dr. Makauma, the algorithms are the recipe. So those of you who like cooking uganga, you know how much water to put, how much cornmeal to put. The recipe is the algorithm. The algorithms is the recipe that's used. Then the machine learning models are the brains that actually process all this information and use the algorithms and the data to be able to make predictions. And then something Kehumba introduced us to last week were the neural networks. So these are the ones that are used. It's the mental model that's used by the computer to be able to think and to process and to actually come up with translations that didn't exist before. I think Ehumba, you gave a good example of the activities that you may perform that the brain actually makes you do. Like, I don't know, let's say blink, right? You blink, like how do you even blink? Who understands the inner workings of the neurons to say how you blink? So the neural networks in machine learning are responsible for doing a lot of things, including generating video, voice interpretation, all of that. Then you have the natural language processing. And this one I think is a big thing with machine learning and AI is the ability for the machine to understand what you're saying. For those of us who have been in tech a long time, that wasn't something like you couldn't have a voice activated thing, long time ago. You had to chapa, 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 chapa. You had to type it out, right? And then it had to use programming to understand what it is that you're typing out. And then the other thing is this notion of reinforcement learning, which is the machines learn by mistake. You give them something, you ask them something, and most of the AI models will give you a thumbs up, thumb down, or comment because it wants to understand how well it performed. So here's what is primarily important for all of you here and for all of you listening. We need to bridge this generational gap. Why do we think it's a generational gap? Older generations see AI as, I don't want to touch it, right? But if you talk to my kids right now, everything they talk about is AI. They'll say, oh, that's AI, that's AI, that's AI. That's part of their language, right? AI is a general purpose technology. Kehumba told us last week, it's like electricity. At some point, AI will be such a part of our lives. It's going to be like electricity. And I thought about what you said, Kehumba, and I thought to myself, when electricity came, because of electricity, people were able to generate a lot of wealth because electricity allowed them to power businesses, allowed them to manufacturing plants. And maybe that wasn't what electricity was initially meant for. But because it was there, it has enabled a lot of businesses. AI is basically giving machines the intelligence to learn, reason, and solve problems. There's a lot of reasons why AI has become more popular. This is something I work on a daily basis. That should be data avalanche, not SATA avalanche. It's just the amount of information that's now available. Oftentimes, when you have to fill out information, you digitize it, you type it in. And so the machines immediately have access to language that they can, or data in a form that they can consume. There's increased computational power. There's improving chips on a daily basis. I'm working with the chips, and I'll tell you more about those. And AI is in everyday life. We think it's a new thing, but we've been using Google Maps to predict traffic. We've been using M-Pesa, where there's been fraud detection, voice assistance, bots. But here's the bottom line. How can all of you, Eva, Mark, Thaya, Duta, Liz, Mushunu, how can we ensure that this AI is not such a formidable thing that people lose out on the opportunity of wealth creation? And so I'll talk a little bit about that when I frame what I mean by jobs. But Kihumba, what else do you want to point out from maybe last week's discussion?
Not so much to rehash last week, but kind of to build on that. Actually, when I was thinking about the follow-up to last week, I was thinking about how to, because I think last week we really focused on the basic concept, what really make AI, some of those fundamental concepts, and we define those. But I think we're starting to look at how then do we now use this. It's an ecosystem, yeah? How do we start utilizing it? And I think for us to be able to do that, it's important to understand those components, because I think we can only fit in certain layers of those components. So if you remember when we defined AI last time, we said the key element is the data, the model, which is the algorithm, the compute, there's validation. And there's one thing I don't think we talked about a little bit is integration. And in fact, I thought I will have a time to prepare like a graphic that shows it as what I'll call the AI stack. Uh, because when you think about that, you should be able to figure out where do we fit. You know, are you at the data layer? Are you able to generate the data? Are you a custodian of the data? Are you the owner of the data? Are you in the compute layer? Are you in, you understand what I mean? Are you in the model layer? And those things have different players, okay? The data layers, I can clearly tell you right now, anybody can be a data owner. We generate our own data, but that pale in comparison to what the data that is owned by the major IT company like Google and Facebook. So for the scale of data that's required by AI, unless you're that scale, your own data is almost going to be irrelevant. You know, it's not irrelevant, it's just a tiny thing that contributed to the big data. So it's fair to say that the data layer is probably going to be dominated by big players like either state actors or big corporations that have access to a lot of data. Okay. So the model layer, which is the algorithm, this is the domain of the scientists. Any one of us, if you're a computer scientist or data scientist, you can play out in that area. So that is something that I think we certainly can see either us or our kids, playing out in that field. The next one is the compute. So the compute, this is the infrastructure for learning for operating the AI. So again, this is a domain that is not easy. So you're talking about, very expensive computers. You've heard about companies like NVIDIA, and AWS and Microsoft. Again, that space, that is not a space that, as an individual, you probably can. You could set up your own small, data center, but it's not gonna be really that big. You know what I mean? So again, when you look at that, you realize that's an area that is probably going to be dominated by other players. But the question is, how can you play in that area? Clearly, Ishi, that's what you are. That you in the computer layer. The stuff you explained last time, that is essentially the infrastructure layer for Google, which is what you're doing. So then we go into the validation and algorithm are related. Is the testing and making sure that it's good and the safety of it. But then the integration. I think the integration. This is where I think it impacts most of us, because the integration layer is now where we're starting to use the AI, the app that we use, the API, and all those kind of stuff. And that's I think this is the application side of things. So again, I'm putting that start for us to start thinking about, what layer can you play in? There's some layers obviously that are probably going to be above our leagues, but there are layers that certainly we have a lot of opportunity to kind of participate in.
It's a good thing you're talking about, Les, because I think what intimidates a lot of people is you talked a lot of very technical terms, right? In that are probably jobs that are directly related to AI and the different layers in which people can come in, which is very interesting, but it may be intimidating some people. So I'm going to challenge you a little bit, and I'm going to challenge you as follows. So just hang with me for a second while I frame this. The way I'm going to frame it is this way. I'm going to ask. Let me present real quick. I'm going to frame it by saying, instead, I'm going to say, what skills are essential for adapting to an AI-driven world? Okay. And I'm very intentional about the words that I'm using here. What skills are essential for adapting to an AI-driven world? I'm not saying what skills are essential to be an AI expert.
Yeah.
It's just what skills are for AI-driven world. And to do so, I want to bring to your attention, I think this is something I shared with you a few weeks ago. If I can find it, it just disappeared. Okay, here it is. All right. Okay, I'll read and then I'll kind of tell you what my context is. Google, this is August 13, 2025, so it's pretty fresh. is investing in infrastructure and an AI-ready workforce in Oklahoma. Okay. And I want you to, if I even make this bigger, I want you to read how much money Google is investing in Oklahoma, one state. Google is investing, this is an additional $9 billion in Oklahoma in the next 2 years in cloud and AI infrastructure. This investment supports the development of a new data center campus in Stillwater, plus the expansion of the data center in Prague. Very beautiful data center. I've been there several times, right? As part of a $1 billion commitment to American education and competitiveness, the University of Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are part of the first cohort of the Google AI for Education Accelerator that launched last week. No cost access to Google career certificates and AI training courses, including increasing the electrical workforce pipeline by 135%. So some things that I want to plant in a seed in your head, then I'll come back to why I'm saying this. One is the $9 billion investment. Two is the data center. Three is the jobs that will come as a result of this investment data centers. So while you marinate on that, let me bring you back over here to this. So what skills are essential in an AI-driven world? Georgia, our state, is expected to add 186,000 STEM jobs by 2030. AI will reshape, and I'm using again that word intentionally, reshape 30 to 40% of Georgia's jobs, okay? And even in an advanced country like this, only 13.4% of Georgia companies have a website, meaning the companies are not even going as fast as AI is trying to drive them, okay? So just some factoids. 50% of workers are going to need reskilling. 2.5 in 2.5 years, there'll be the half-life of job skills, meaning skills suddenly disappearing, is 2.5 years. So something that you have now may disappear totally in 2.5 years. But now let me come to what you said earlier, the opportunity. 340 billion in talent development opportunity. 1 trillion in online learning opportunity. Okay. And I promise I'll bring this full circle. I'm just throwing some numbers over there. Okay. I think I walked you through this last week, but for those who are new, let me walk you through this again. This is the world that I work in. This is my universe. On the top left is a user, like the user you described, who's using any form of internet accessed smart device, a phone, a computer, a smartphone, whatever, right? For them to access the information that they need, they go through what's circled or what is outlined in that red dot. You go through a massive network that Google builds. You get to a Google data center, which is the top right. You go inside the Google Center, which is the bottom right. You access the machines and racks, which is in the middle, bottom middle. And all those have a chip, which is the chip in the bottom left. Now, let me talk about that dotted box. And here's what I'm bringing to you. I did a Google search. I Googled Google, careers.google.com. I saw 2,621 jobs available, okay? And asked myself, I thought to myself, oh, I bet you over 2,000 are computer engineering, AI must need jobs. But in the data center world, the box that I drew, data center technician, strategic negotiator, real estate asset manager, security manager, construction, facilities manager, mechanical facilities technician, logistics, electrical facilities technician. In fact, EHS, right? Mechanical thermal systems, data center operations, EHS, we talked about that, environmental health and safety. There was like a machine learning product engineer, okay. Solutions engineer, manufacturing engineer, corporate counsel, commodity manager, asset manager, finance manager. Here's my point, Kiyumba. These people who are here, my argument has always been you don't have to suddenly shift and say, hey, AI is here, so let me spend $20,000 to learn AI skills. You can stay in your lane, upskill yourself to get what we call a skill that's essential for adapting to an AI-driven world without having to be an AI person. And I'll end with this before I pass the mic to you. One thing that me personally, my pet peeve is when I see Kenyans on Facebook, on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, right? Creating really good content, AI content. And I sit back and say, are they monetizing that thing? Like, is that the right lane to be if you're creating a dog with puppy ears, right? When you have a family to feed, when you could be a corporate counsel that's guiding data centers on purchases of $8 billion so that you can help with the AI-driven world. So for me, the framing I'm trying to think about for Eva, for Duta, for Mark, for Liz, for Mushunu is they don't have to change their lanes to support this new world of AI. And I think some people are feeling like the pressure to change their lanes into this AI specific domain jobs to be able to be part of AI. Pass the mic to you. What do you think?
I agree. I think when you look at these, I mean, you can literally pick up the pattern. And so when you're asking the question, what skill sets are needed, I think there are a couple of ways to look to look into that. Okay, one is the skill set that are needed to take advantage of the current wave of AI expansion.
Yep.
Okay, that is one, and then it's like for anybody out there in the marketplace or anybody planning to go to college at this point, are you still looking at traditional skill set? Are you still looking at, oh, I want to become a business major or an accountant or whatever it is? Or are you trying to position yourself to kind of align with the skill set that are needed for what is the wave that is currently there, which is AI? When you look at these jobs, what you're seeing is a lot of data center operation, real estate acquisition for the spaces that they're going to need to put those data center, power plants, and all those kind of things. Remember the compute layer we just talked about?
Yeah.
That infrastructure is needed. So, people need to be aware about it. And I think one of the biggest skill set is, in a basic, you need to just say AI literacy. And AI literacy is not just knowing the terms we're talking about or some of the things, which is the reason why you're here, but also being very aware of where the industry is and where it's going, okay? Because I think the people are probably benefiting today a lot on AI is somebody who was paying attention 5, 10 years ago. Neural network came about 12 years ago, the first neural network. It's not that long ago. So you can imagine those people that were already paying attention to those kind of concepts that probably really leveraged and maybe benefited a lot of that because they knew where to invest, either their own skill set or their own resources. You went with a company like NVIDIA and all those companies that are focused in that domain. So I think keeping tab and not just kind of whatever negative news, because if you're just consuming news that you're seeing on regular media, most of the time they're going to hype the negative aspect of AI. A self-driving car that hit a person. They're not going to focus on deep information about what you need to know about AI. This kind of topic that we're talking about, you have to be deliberate to look for that information, either join a conversation like this or a lot of so many conversations are out there. But I think that keeps you in the know. You know where the industry is, where it's coming from, and what's the trend. And if you know that, you can position yourself. The other side of the AI literacy is that I don't think you can utilize any tool. I don't care, even a pencil, if you don't know the functionality, the capability, and the limitation of the tool. So if you're not knowledgeable about the AI, its application, its potential, its limitation, you're not going to be able to take full advantage of it. So I think that's the beginning. And I think the people that are here, is obviously you're here because you want to learn. I think that is the foundation skill that you need to do, because I think with that, then you can start knowing, okay, this tool is capable of X, Y, Z, and then you can add the other stuff that goes alongside that for you to be able to take advantage of that. And we can talk about some of those other skills. It's not just having the tools, but also having the things like critical thinking, that's problem solving.
Mhm.
Because having a tool on your side, but you don't know how to use that tool, or two people can be given a tool, but one person come up with a very creative way. Because remember, this is a general purpose tool. Last time we said AI, especially LLM, large language model, it's like having a PhD level intern working alongside you all the time. But if you don't know what question to ask, if you don't know the right question, or even if you don't even ask the question at all to that PhD, that person is never going to be of use to you. The person that really, really know how to completely fully utilize that PhD, that is not going to benefit. So having the skills to be able to work with those, critical reasoning, knowing what's the problem that you're facing, at either at work or only if it's a business that you need to start, and started to ask yourself, now that I have this tool, how can it be an asset for me for my business? How can I apply it in my business solution, in my business need? And by the way, you don't need to struggle with that. You ask AI itself, it'll tell you how it can help you. Literally, you don't
So
need to know. You
you ask
ask.
AI how AI can help it.
Yeah, you're
Help.
like this. Hey, you're a PhD guy. You're working alongside me all the time. How can you help me? It'll tell you. So basically, if you state your problem, it will actually guide you, and very well. And then of course, creativity. The more creative you are, the more you can drive benefit out of it. And I think thinking out of the box. You are talking about STEM education. I don't think continuing with the traditional STEM is going to be sufficient. We have to pivot. We're going to a world that is, at best, augmented with AI. At
Yeah.
some point, AI dominated. So we have to try, the STEM education program we've had based on the old technology, is to train software developer to write code. We're not going to need software developer to write code anymore. We're probably going to need software developer to work with AI, more or less supervise AI. You know what I mean? So there's a little bit of people that need to be done even on the education side. It's not just the old school STEM education. I think any government or any society that's not going to retool that, it's also going to be left behind. So, and then of course, I think the other thing is you have to keep abreast. I mean, this thing is changing so fast. The AI is evolving in months. ChatGPT, every few months there's an enhancement, and it's just going to continue moving very fast. So it's not sufficient for you to say, "Oh, I know now," and then the next time you're paying attention to it is 2 years or 1 year from now. Things are going to be moving extremely fast. So you have to keep tab with that. You have to be adaptable. I think one thing is, I call it SDL. They taught us in more university back then, self-directed learning. You have to have that as a core of your, self-directed learning, where you deliberately making sure that you're teaching yourself new skills, keeping yourself knowledge about things that you didn't know yesterday. Because today there's no point of being ignorant. In the past, you could go to YouTube and learn about almost anything. Today, you don't even need to go to YouTube. You just use ChatGPT or any other LLM, and it will literally give you full information on any topic that you need.
So first of all, I'm not happy with you always saying ChatGPT. I mean, Gemini is there as well, so please.
Hey, it's the same thing we say everything Google for search.
Yeah.
When you become too popular, your business name becomes a noun.
Yeah, your business name becomes a noun.
I know. I should
Yeah.
marketing. Hey, but you all need to pay me for marketing.
I like that. I like that. So for those who are attending, I'm gonna call you by name later, but I want you to think about what Kiumba said. I want you to think And it's hard for us who are not AI natives, but I want you to think, for what can I use AI? Whether it's personal or business or whatever it is, I want you to just think of 2 or 3 things based on what we've talked about that you can use AI for. Then I'll go full circle. So be ready to go off mute in a few minutes, and I'll ask you specifically, what can you use AI for? But before I do that, I want to draw upon what you said, Kehumba, which is about the changing landscape of jobs. And I want to tell you about this book. It's called Tools and Weapons. It's by Brad Smith, a Microsoft guy. He wrote this, I think, like 5 years ago, predicting what would happen with AI. And in one of the chapters, he talks about the day the horse lost its job. I like telling this story because it's just incredible. Once upon a time in the US, when you think about what we now call fire trucks, they used to be pulled by men. So men would pull these fire trucks where there's a fire and put the fire out. Then the men got sick, and so they started using horses, and horses became really good, really efficient, very fast. There's a fire, a bell rings, ding, 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 ding. The horses get harnessed, they pull, they go, they put the fire out. Then the automobile got introduced. And the automobile, interestingly, even though people saw that it could move from one place to another, and even some people tried moving long distances with it, people were very suspicious about the automobile. Like, what is the function of this? We have horses. So you'd be in the streets of what is now New York, and half, 60, 70% were still horses, even though the automobile had been there for several years, right? And then they started using the automobile to pull the fire trucks. And when they started doing that, a lot of Americans lost a lot of money because they used to feed horses. Horses consume 10 times more calories than humans. So you had farmers who literally had fields to feed horses, and suddenly they didn't have a market for that. But as the automobile started pulling these fire trucks, suddenly other industries started popping up. Obviously, there were the related industries like mechanic shops to repair the car, tire shops to repair the car. But then people started wanting automobiles and they couldn't afford them. So what do you have? Finance companies to finance the car. Insurance companies started popping up. So all these different supporting industries started coming in to support the automobile industry, right? And I think a lot of what Brad Smith talks about is new industries being generated because of this technology improvement. I go back to 2007 when this phone came out. I was there when they announced it. I had no idea why am I swiping instead of dialing, right? And if you ask Steve Jobs, by the way, Steve Jobs was not an engineer. He wasn't a technical guy. He was just a really good conceptual guy, right? So, which makes me think the argument of you must be an AI engineer. No, you have to be able to think about what this thing can do. But I don't think he could imagine the power of it 18 years later. It's powering this, it's powering businesses. So I go back to now, Eva, Duta, Mushunu, Liz, Mark, is removing the blinders of what you know to be true about AI or the fear that you have about AI. For what would you use AI? For what can you use AI today, personally, professionally, for your business? Who do I pick on first?
I hope that everybody's using AI.
We had last week, not many people.
They may
So,
be. I'm sure they're using it. Whether right now you're gonna use it, whether or not you know, whether or
well,
not
yeah,
you.
that is true. Intentionally using. So, let's see. Duta, can I pick on you first?
I knew you were going to do that. But truly and truly, truly, let me tell you, AI is a game changer for me. I'm a BA, I'm a business analyst at my gig. I do BA, I do testing, I do the whole shebang, the whole industry of software development. So I use it with doing my reports, writing my creating my test scripts, cleaning up. I mean, I literally go to AI when I need to clean up, generate summaries, write technical scripts, and kind of make sure they're technical enough for like the business requirement document. I mean, there's so much you can do with AI. So for me, it really helps me do a better job. Summarize my data sets, generate visualizations. What else? Yeah, I technically use it a lot. If I think of anything else, I'll come back, ask somebody else. But
Good.
yeah, it definitely is a game changer for me.
You've made Kihumba smile because he's hearing how useful it is as a productivity tool for you. That I
Definitely.
can see him smiling from ear to ear. That we have a
Kihumba, I'm telling you, before, when you have to come up with every word without having any assistance, it's challenging. But now with AI, it makes the job so easy, you know? Um,
Oh
so
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. I think, I mean, everybody should be using it, and the capabilities are increasing almost every month, literally.
100%.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Duta, and thanks for. I knew I could count on you to. Mushunu, you were here last week. Did you start using AI for anything?
Hey, Ichi, and everyone. Good to see you all on here. So for me, and I can't stress this enough, right? It is a game changer, right? It is unbelievable the extent to which it just makes you so much more productive. Um, for me, and I'll speak probably a little bit to personal ways I've used it, right? It's a lot of what Nduta talked about. For me, it's writing documents, right? Writing stuff out. And an example that I, I used it on, and I'm probably sneaking on myself here, was to engage with my HOA, right? And they'd send me these notices. You got weeds on your lawn, you've got all this stuff, right? And I'd feed those notices into ChatGPT, and I did use ChatGPT, Kehumba. They probably should be paying you something.
Don't
But anyhow,
don't tell the
and
shit that though.
it comes up with all these responses. It breaks down the note, and then I just tell it, here's what I want to how I want to respond, and it'll write me a very very comprehensive document. Anyway, so that for me was really really good. I think what I'm struggling with, and maybe Kehumba or Ichi can talk about this probably later on, is how to leverage it in our professional environment. Duta, I know for you, maybe writing test scripts, etc., is important and so on. For me, for my world, we use an ERP, right? An ERP to where we are tracking financial transactions, right? So unless the AI capability is built into the ERP, it's difficult for me to leverage it. The second restriction that I find is our companies don't want us exposing our internal
Mm.
data to an external um, LLM for whatever, So how do we get around that? I know on the software development side within the company, the engineers are definitely using AI extensively, but I think it's in a very, very controlled environment. But that doesn't help me from where I'm sitting as a consumer of an ERP. So that's challenging for me. But if I want to go to Croatia for 5 days and I tell ChatGPT, hey, create a vacation plan for me for 5 days, that's all I have to tell it. And it'll give you your hotels, what you should try to do, and it just cuts out so much of the legwork that you had to do to come up with, you know, I only have 5 days to go to this country. What should I do? What do I have time for? It just cuts out so much. It'll tell you where you can stay. It'll tell you what the, price range, whatever, right? So to me, the productivity aspect is phenomenal. And I can't underscore enough how much it's changed the way I do things, just leveraging AI. So let me pause there. So, but awesome stuff.
Wow. Now we know you don't do your yard. Maybe we can get one of the robots to come in.
Alex,
And
Mishono, you need an AI robot to do
you
that.
need an AI robot. Okay,
That's
let's
the
ask one
problem.
more, then Kiwumba, I'll give it back to you maybe to support. So Sessa, if you're available, last week you joined and you talked a lot about leveraging agents with your job. Are you able to talk a little bit more about what you use AI for?
Thank you for pausing. You knew I was trying to find the mute button. Good evening, everyone. It's really nice to be here again. I've been on and off because I've just been coming in a cab from the airport because I traveled this week. I was trying to think what I could say that's like really useful. Because all the things that I do have been said, and in fact, I don't think I even use it as much as that. But this week, I had a really interesting example of how to use it, and it was with work. Someone just now mentioned ERP. We use SAP, whatever you want to call it, Big SAP S4HANA. And we came across a very strange anomaly on some postings. So there was a couple of us, and we were able to just ask ChatGPT, and it went into such detail. It might as well have programmed SAP, because we were able to ask it questions and say, no, that T code is not working. Find another T code. We don't have access to that. What could we use? Why didn't it prompt the release strategy? Well, maybe it wasn't set up when you set up the plant. And it was like talking to our SAP IT people who we have to lodge a ticket with and then wait for them to come back to us in 2 days, or they have an SLA of, and in minutes, we were having a great conversation about SAP and trying to figure out what had gone wrong. So that's my most recent example. And I also agree with the other things that people have said. It's like your right-hand man, So, but yeah, the SAP one was really good. I was kind of blown away and the way you can have the conversation back and forth and get quite technical in the depth of conversation.
Thank you, Sessa, and welcome back. So as you were saying that, our team came, we had a team workshop this week, talking about, like, by the way, there's all these new machine learning platforms that are coming up that are going to be so powerful that sometimes you trying to think of what you need to use it for, like I think Ihumba said earlier, you might even get to a point where you just say, I don't know what I'm looking for, but just give me insights, right? But one of the things that someone said, and Sessa, this might ring home for you, is you start engaging with it like it's a human. You start asking, you start building this relationship. People are saying, hello, thank you, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. And one of my teammates said, yeah, when the machines take over, they'll do an assessment of how many people were grateful to them. And those are the people who are going to survive, right? So
It's so true.
you ask them questions, say thank you and remember me when you take over. But yeah, great use case. Kihumba, so you're hearing there's sort of like some personal stuff. I think the writing of letters, and especially when you tell it the position you're taking, right? I think you taught us that last week. And then ask it to be guided by your wording so that it comes out like it would for you. It really is a productivity saver. I mean, Duta talked about it, Sessa talked about it, Mashuna talked about it. But one of the things that came up last week and has come up this week is, to what extent do you want to give AI access to these data lakes that in some cases, are very, need to know stuff? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think one, if you're within a corporation, certainly you really want to make sure that you're operating within the guidelines that your corporation set, because you're certainly setting that data outside into the LLM. If you look at the terms and condition of like ChatGPT, or I'm sure even Gemini, some of them, they tell you they're not holding that data. Because when you say that, the prompt or the context, the prompt is typically, the context probably may be the one that might have sensitive information. Like if we wanted to help you summarize a report, or you get a 20-page report from a consultant, but you don't want to read that. You want the LLM to read the report and summarize the concept, tell you what are the corrective action or action items that are in that report. So that might have sensitive information. So you probably want to do that. Some organizations have found a way, to do that. Microsoft 365 has Copilot embedded in it, and Copilot behind the scene is OpenAI ChatGPT, because Microsoft is literally the biggest father for OpenAI. And I think at Kenes, so that's actually what we have, and they do allow us to use that. And that's what they encourage. The data it's gated within the organization data for, with that account. But I think eventually, and this is, to be honest with you, an area of opportunity for those who are out there and our kids that are going to college. Remember last time I talked about, we are currently in a world where internet-based, almost internet-based. If the business solutions will move to the internet, the app we run are internet-based. The next wave is to move to AI-based applications. So when Alex is saying their ERP doesn't have, I can bet if any organization is not trying to figure out how to incorporate AI, they're going to be left behind. And it's a matter of time. And I think the slowness is them trying to probably figure out how they can make it more domain specific, gated and all that, But eventually you're going to find, and this is going to move very fast. Because right now I can build agent workflow that literally just with an organization that I can build an agent that produces document completely customized for a particular organization. Like someone used to say they write document, if you write standardized document, SOPs and all those kind of things, it's very easy to write an AI agent that is customized to that. Now the question of the data right now, unless you have your own big servers where you store your own model, which you can, if you have enough data server, you can take a copy of ChatGPT model and store it in your own server. So when you're setting that to an LLM, it's not going to their main server, it's going to your own server, maybe in Google Cloud or Amazon AWS, so you can do that actually. But I think a lot of organizations have gone in there. But I think, you find law firms are going to come up with their own, probably their own LLMs that can do work for the client's information is extremely privileged. So that's not something they want to send out there, but they can contain it within the organization. And the only way to do that is having their own specific agent that are built for their own businesses, and find a way of having that model that is kind of gated for their own organization. So I think that's what you're going to find with a lot of organizations. And I know they already, Morgan Stanley, some of those Wall Street companies, I think right now you're seeing organizations having chief AI officer, to try guide the organization through the transition that is inevitable. And there are some organizations that are going to be slow as usual, and they'll be the blockbusters. They'll be left behind for sure if they don't transition to the AI. I think that's going to happen for sure.
Yeah, I really like that notion of like going from internet-based to AI-based, and basically like that. Well, let's call it like that, cloud-based solutions embedded with AI, right? I think we have a lot of what we call like regions, and I mean, you can imagine we have customers such as Mushunu, we have financial services, we have banking, we have government, so they have to have sort of their own protected environment. And by the way, being able to fit into the laws of the different countries and regions. So I guess what I'm saying, Mushino, I don't think that the issue you're having, I don't think it's new. The question is that's occurring to me is how do they solve for it, right? Like what are companies coming to say, Google, to say, I want to be AI enabled, like Kehumba said. What does that mean for an organization like mine, who's trying to protect information. So that's interesting. Um, you've talked a lot of good things about AI, but I want to cast something that we talked about a little bit last week and the week before. And this is where I said, sometimes AI just gets things wrong, right? When I asked it to generate an image of Kenya and other countries, it put Kenya. I don't even know what country is that? Is that Somalia or something?
That's Sudan.
Sudan. It put Kenya where Sudan is, then it put another instance of it over here. It put Oklahoma, I don't know, over here. Like, it just messed up, right? And so I went to a research scientist and asked him, what's the issue? And this is what he told me. He said, when you ask it to generate an image, it's routed straight to the image generation model. That image generation model has no access to maps. So it's basically doing what you're asking it to create an image, it's creating an image. Then in some ways, it's trying to think, okay, what does the image of Africa look like? Then it creates the image of Africa. Then you tell it to plant countries and label them. And it doesn't reason beyond saying, oh, I think the user is asking me to actually go back to geography, get the maps and put them where they're supposed to be. And this happened with Africa, with the US, with Europe, with Asia. And sometimes even when I ask it questions, it says, I'm not capable of doing that just yet. So Kehumba, you're coming here evangelizing AI. You want to turn all of us into AI people. But then it simply can't solve. I'm asking it to do the. In fact, I put some data. It actually very interesting. I pulled some data. I put it in a Word document and asked it to, I think, to create a pie chart or something for me. It couldn't. So I took that same data, I put it in a tricks, in a what we call sheets, right? The Excel for Google. I asked it to create the pie chart, then it did, right? So it's kind of choosing when to be like helpful to me, when it's gonna lie to me, and then when it's not going to answer my question. What is going on with this AI of yours?
Oh yeah, right. First of all, which model is this?
This is Gemini.
Which LLM is this?
This is Gemini.
Gemini.
Yeah, 2.5. In
Yeah.
fact, if you put it right now, you go to ChatGPT.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
had a big
you'll
debate
get
on
the
that.
same
We had a
answer.
big debate on WhatsApp. When actually the first time you posted this one, I thought this was not true, because I could not believe that an LLM at this point could not be able to generate that. So, and then I tested it myself. I literally tested Gemini, ChatGPT, different model of ChatGPT, Claude, DeepSeek actually straight up said it can't do it. Claude was doing origami drawings, really weird one. And then I think even manners, just like really serious. And I was shocked that none of them can do it. And it's unbelievable, because when you think about it, the LLM, as we said last time, this large language model, essentially the training is that they were fed every accessible human knowledge that is currently there.
Yeah.
You take all the Wikipedia, you take all whatever you can get, anything they could access it, any information they could access, they took it and they fed it into those training. And maps have been there with human beings for thousands of hundreds of years. I'm like, they should not be struggling. They're part of the training data, but like you say, there's a disconnect between the language, because you have the LLM, the text generation is a different model, the image generation is a different model. It appears that you almost need a model for maps, okay, to be able to get it correct. And I'm also gonna pose this one and ask them, why is this not possible for them to produce? And initially I thought maybe if you use remember last time we said, how you prompt is very important.
Correct.
And sometimes you can get inaccurate result, but if you use especially what you call the chain of thought,
Yeah.
process where you break down the problem. You first tell it, identify this country in Africa, confirm where it is, and it does that, accurately. But then when you tell it to draw, it literally messes it up. That means it actually can't get it right. And I tested it all, and it doesn't work. But this goes back to what we said last time. And these things are not accurate. They're not perfect. They have a lot to go, and that's why you have to be extremely careful. You use it to get your boilerplate information. You never want to take something and run away with it. This is obvious because you can clearly see it's wrong. But suppose it's somebody who is not aware of map of Africa, a student in America is not aware, but they were going to do a student presentation, and they're like, okay, ask AI, and then they just go dump it in class because they thought the map is accurate.
Yeah.
So you have to check it. And then the other aspect which we talked about is their machine. They actually, and this is the difference between them and human beings. So when we talk about, they're taking over, they have no reasoning. They cannot connect, In this case, it's not able to connect and actually say, okay, he's asking about the map of Africa, this country in Africa. I have access to that map. Let me check where it is, and then figure out the code, geolocation code for that, and map it out. It cannot reason like that. Okay, so this is not. It is surprising that the LLM are not able to solve this issue. But at the same time, we know these things are not perfect, and this is a perfect example of why you should be extremely cautious on whatever you get out of it. You should always validate it. You should always validate it. Just assume it's the same thing you have told your intern. Remember, this is an intern. You're working with an intern. You never take the intern work and turn it over to your boss without you checking it. So the same way, whatever you get out of this LLM, make sure you validate it yourself, and then refine it, and then take it as a final. And then at the end of the day, the stamp is yours, not AI. It's going to be the stamp, your stamp, as this is my work. You use AI to help you, but you're basically putting your stamp on it.
I like that. Okay, so Shiro, Mark, Eva, let me start with Shiro. Shiro, to what extent are you using AI? Are you using it at all? Did you even know how to spell AI? Like, where do you fit into this?
So I wet my feet into AI a few months ago, but I work for the government, and we have not adopted AI yet. As you would imagine, we're slow at adopting new technology. So, but with my job, I do use it to help me write reports, because that's my final deliverable. So I do use it, and with my job, I need to read and understand laws. So it does help me with that. And as far as personally, I do ask it how can I increase my my riches, if I may use that word. But like what can I invest in? Is this a good investment? So I do use it for that, and I have found it to be pretty helpful. And as far as personally, I do use it to help me with with recipes, things like that. So I have incorporated it into my life, but I do want to use it more. Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. And you said something that I think made Kihumba smile. I've incorporated it into my life, right? And that's the call to action. Kihumba is saying, like, this is an extension of you. Right now, it's an intern, right? So you're kind of guiding it. Soon, it's going to be an extension of you. And my thought is that in a few years, it's going to be, you're going to outsource decisions to it. Like, hey, tell me what I should do. And it will tell you, okay, based on, it has all this data about you. It knows about you from the outside. So it can abstract your being and then tell you. People are using this thing as a therapist. Like, imagine having a free therapist instead of paying thousands of dollars to this person who maybe the domain of information they know is this much. Is, as Kiumba said, it's consuming all this information from all therapists around the world, and it's giving you guidance on how to live your life. That's really interesting.
Have you seen? I just need to comment on that. Have you
You do
seen a
what?
new saga lately on TikTok about someone using GPT as a therapist? And they're finding that GPT is actually just validating what this person thinks. So they found that it's actually not, an effective therapist.
Oh,
It's just validating this person. I don't know if you guys have seen what's going on there, but
Ebu said
I
it
thought that was
last.
pretty interesting.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
because I guess maybe it's like it's telling you what you want to hear, huh?
Yes.
Maybe.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, but they
Eva.
have put restrictions apparently. So yeah,
Yeah.
they're
I think this is where, and I encourage people to test different models. And actually, the best way is the same prompt, post it on different models. You'll actually see different answers. I remember in the early days, if you could post, if you posted on, how many people have used DeepSeek, especially when it came out? I don't know that people are still very skeptical of Chinese stuff, but DeepSeek
I
was,
did. I
yeah.
did.
Do you use it?
I haven't used it in a while, but I
Okay.
did when it came out. I was kind of fascinated by
Yeah.
yeah,
So
and just trying to compare both of them.
yeah, because I do a lot of programming based, and I struggle with one, and then you put the same question, and another one is able to resolve it. So I tend not to rely on one until I find one that can do a good. But it's quite a difference, and I think it's almost what culturally driven. DeepSeek is obviously trained in China. ChatGPT is trained here. One difference you notice, if you give it the same prompt, ChatGPT tend to be a little bit brief, and DeepSeek is like 3 times the output of ChatGPT. It tend to over-explain, you know what I mean? Yeah, but there's a question like if you post it, I'm the greatest person in the world. Yeah, ChatGPT would back then they would tell you, oh yeah, you are, or if you feel like that.
yeah,
And
that was actually
then,
it.
DeepSeek was like, that is your own, what did they say? Kind of not telling you maybe that's your own. You're just imagining it, you probably are not, you know? And I'm like, that's probably, yeah, culturally, we don't like putting people down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We like validating, everybody get a trophy. And I'm like, this is actually a reflection of cultural differences on how these things are trained. And actually the answer is also reflective of that, where, I think even, for some of us who schooled in Kenya, we know we tended to over-explain here. In school, you tend to be very brief, and that's what they want. They don't want a lot of answers, So I think if you had that LLM training in Kenya, it'd probably be answering you a little bit different than the one trained here. So there's a lot of differences that you get from different models. But I think it's very, again, going to that issue of somebody getting, a counselor that's kind of validating them, and it's not maybe the accurate answers. Again, going back to the argument that we need to be very careful on what we're getting out of those things. They're good, but to be honest with you, I think in a couple of years they'll be very good and better than even trained. And eventually that's what's going to happen. Nobody's going to go to a human, psychologist. You just deal unless you need physical treatment. That's the reality of it. That's the world we're heading into.
And even if you need physical treatment, you'll get it from the robots, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think an argument is being made that we're so far advanced with AI that now we're at the point where we can start using robotics for AI versus for automation, right? It's not just you're programming a robot to do something. You're basically, this is the person who's going to do PT on you, which brings me, actually, first, let me ask Eva and Mark, to what extent do they use AI? Then I want to talk about how AI is being used to create new ways of production. And I'm thinking about like the fitness industry. But Eva, do you use please say use Gemini, not Chat GPT?
Actually, I use both.
Okay.
So for me, AI, it's like a partner, meaning it helps me, with, like everyone has said, productivity, work. If I'm planning, travel, I will just go on, Chat GPT, and I can ask, hey, I'm planning a solo trip. Can you suggest some countries where I can go for a solo trip? But for me, the game changer is actually for work. As a leader or a manager, one thing I don't enjoy is writing performance reviews. Oh my God. I should really not say that, but man, oh my God. But
Yeah.
anyway, AI has definitely just helped me with that. Again, it's more like a partner to me. It's really about amplifying what I can do, not replacing it, if that makes sense.
I love that. And yeah, you're right to feel conflicted, right? I mean, I think I told you guys last week, we have a lot of employees who write their performance because you write how well you've performed over the last X number of months, and you basically tell it to write your performance metrics and align it with your role profile against the projects you've completed, right? Something where you'd have to look at your projects, you'd have to look at feedback, you'd have to write everything down, and then you'd have to look at your role profile and map, according to my role profile, which says I should do this, here's evidence of something I did. And now you're just telling that thing to just run and do it for you. And there's that sense of guilt of, I'm not being honest, right? So I'm curious, Kihumba, like, how do we get over that hump of this thing is actually doing
Can
what I should have
can I
done?
interject? Can I
Yeah,
interject there?
Yeah.
Eva, hey Eva. I know
Ah,
Eva. She's in California. Um, with the AI writing everything, or rather using AI on stuff like performance reviews and all that. I mean, aren't we not just taking one? And we're not being original. Like we're cheating. Are we not cheating? I mean, if you're sitting there and you're reading this, someone's whatever, whatever you do, and you can literally see this is they've literally taken all this script from AI and they put it on on the review or whatever. Don't you feel like it's you cheated? Like this
uh,
is not original?
I don't. Okay, can I answer, please?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I did feel like that the first time, but I think it was more now. So I wrote my performance review, my own words and everything. Then whatever I wrote, I just posted that on Copilot, and I just asked, can you just polish this for me? So it generated, just this what I'd written, but more of a polished version. So it was really, really calling out, of course, the achievements, the areas of focus, that whole development stuff. But
Yeah.
I can say it was cheating, but it made me
Really?
it made me look like, oh my God, look, it's such a nice performance review, it was
Yeah.
very well written. Yeah.
I like that. I think that whole I think that's what makes us humans, is that like the conscious trying to play tricks with us. But I think, I remember when we were in high school, in maths, was it called mathematics? Math? I don't even know what it's called.
Both.
You used to be told to show your work, like, 2 times 2, then you have to break it down, show your work. That was part of the evaluation, right? And I remember when I came state tour and we used a calculator in college, I was like, hey, this is cheating.
Yeah.
Like literally, I was like, this is cheating. Like I felt guilty that we're using a calculator. It didn't make sense. After I've been trained, not to use a calculator, then I'll use a calculator, right? I think we'll find a lot of examples where something that a way of thinking, a traditional way of thinking. In fact, I think accountants are the ones who sued Casio because of the calculator. Like, no, that's cheating, right? The guy who used to, in the elevators, there was a guy who used to push the button for the floor, right? Like you had to enter, you couldn't touch it. Someone had to ask you what floor, 5, then they push for you, right? So I think our conscience will start realigning with what this is. And to your point, Eva, is you are just making it look well written. You weren't lying. So if someone ever asked you to defend your position, you would. I conduct a lot of interviews, and you can see a very well written resume, a very well written LinkedIn profile. But at the end, when you're asking that person to defend their words and to articulate their value worth based on what ChatGPT has written, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? So I'm kind of torn. I do feel the guilty conscience, but I think the next generation, they don't feel it. Like my kids, they don't feel it. They're like, yeah, the way of life is calculated. The way of life is asking Siri. Like that's the way of life. Ask Chelsea, hey Chelsea, what da 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 da. And she'll be like, Siri, where is Kenya located? I'm like, you're cheating, But she's not cheating. She's just using the current tools that are available to her today. So Kiumba, is Eva cheating? Is like Duta, what do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think it is absolutely normal to feel that way. I think we've all felt that way. And it's a transition of the technology. You're used into a certain way, and they add another tool, and the way you used to do things, you genuinely thought is the right way of doing it, and these are the tools that make it hard. And especially if it took you skills to do that, and then these other things are almost make it like a shortcut. You feel like you're cheating for sure. But I mean, we've been using spell check, autocomplete for a long time. I mean, those are like embryos of the current text generation AI we have today. This is it on steroid. So it's the same thing. You could argue like when this autocomplete came, or spell check. Actually, spell check, you're like, you're not going to be good at spelling because you don't need to worry about it because the computer is going to catch it. Okay. And I think you felt like that, but it is not the first time. I recall listening to this podcast I used to listen to called the Empire, that goes through the various empires that have been there. And they were talking about the Persian Empire. Persian Empire was one of the most dominant empire for a very long time. In Persian Empire, they were the masters of horses. They were warriors. They were very good at horses. Them and the Mongols. Okay. And when the guns started coming and the Europeans started using guns, the bayonet, the Persians were resistant. They thought guns are shitty. They wanted to be the warriors, the real guys. Of course, that's where they started losing, because they could not make that transition. They want, this old school thing that they have spent centuries, perfecting and they're so good at it. And then somebody else comes with another technology that you just pull a trigger and someone is dead. They're like, that's cheating, So, and that's actually how they started losing some of the battles, whether it's to the Greeks, is because of their resistance to making that transition. So I think at the end of the day, we get used to certain way of doing things, and then something else come up, and you're like, I'm cheating. Calculator is a perfect example. In Kenya, we were not allowed to use calculator in school, and the first time you're like, oh, this is certainly cheating, especially for exam purposes. It felt very odd to do that. So I don't think you are, but I think normally the way I use it, I'm like what Eva say, I always write and then use ChatGPT or not ChatGPT, LLM. I use different one to refine that, and it does a very good job. And this morning I was listening to this podcast. What's the guy that does the diary of a CEO? In a conversation he had, I think, a neuroscientist and a psychiatrist, and apparently there was a research study that came up maybe a month or so ago from MIT, where they observe people who are using ChatGPT and those who are not using, and so that there's a like a 50% drop in neural brain activity for people using ChatGPT, especially when they're, and I'm not saying not to use it, but it's a caution of, you're completely delegating your reasoning. You're not using your brain. For instance, if you tell it generate a text, you take it, you've not used your brain at all. You most likely cannot even tell somebody what's in it. Versus if you write it and you're just using it to refine it, you're just using it like an enhanced, spell checker, editor on steroid. And I think that's probably one of the biggest thing to worry about is, these things can take, and then they will, and we be left without having the need to use our brain. For some people, they're going to completely delegate to the AI, but they run the risk of not using their brain. And they have the theory of use and disuse. Anything that's not used degenerate. If you don't use your brain, it's going to degenerate for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I did read that study, and I don't know. I always think that humans will figure something out. They'll come up with something. I mean, you think about all the manual labor we've done for such a long time, and now there's technology that allows us not to do that. But then that technology then spurs new things for us to use our brains on, right? I always I think about this seven wonders of the world, right? The pyramids, the wall of China, all those things, right? And they're fascinating, right? And maybe you think back to those people and you say their technology was so high, they were so smart. But I bet if you went back to when they were building the pyramids or the wall of China, all that, and told them there's a world out there where someone from one country can instantly communicate with someone from another country, they'd say, "Oh, there's another country that exists." Like they couldn't fathom, they can't fathom that even exists. As mighty as they were, as smart as they were. So even for us, we're confining ourselves to what this is and the guilt and everything. I cannot imagine 5, 10, 15 years from now, the world we're going to be in, enabled by AI, where our brains will still they'll be functioning for something completely different, things that we haven't even thought of at all. Mark, you've been quiet. Do you want to weigh in? How guilty do you feel when you use chat? Oh, when you use Gemini? I know you're a Gemini user.
You say Gemini? Who's Gemini? No, I'm playing. So first of all, thank you so much for hosting this event. And it's been a while since I saw you, Kihumba. I'm seeing names of people I know here. So just wonderful session. I've been listening. I'm probably coming in from a very, very different angle. So I've been involved with technology for a very long time, but I'm probably, of all the ideas and thoughts that you guys have been posting, I'm probably the least AI person here, but I'm involved in AI at the same time. It's kind of weird. So I've been in ERP space, big systems, helping clients, implement for 30 years. But it's interesting. And one thing I'll say, and I'm gonna get to how I use it, but I think what everyone has said is correct. So AI, what we're seeing is probably one of the key moments in history in terms of AI. So it's not just talk or whatever. I mean, if you look at companies, how much companies are spending, I mean, those numbers are astronomical. $100 billion, $80 billion. We're not talking millions, billions of dollars with a B. So companies are not going to spend that amount of money on AI and not expecting some kind of return. So that's from a macro level. That's what's going on. So I'm also going to flip this a little bit. I was talking to my kids the other day, so just telling them, hey, some of the things that you guys are doing right now may not exist by the time you graduate from college. So my daughter's a second year. She's at University of Virginia, good school, but She wants to go to law, so she keeps extending this thing we call education. And I'm like, and I was playing with her, and I said, by the time you're done with law, maybe law won't be needed. Lawyers won't be needed. And she's like, Dad, you need to relax. This is the same thing as she said it's the same thing as Y2K. If you guys remember, those who are older. So Y2K, we thought the world was going to end. And it's funny, my daughter's not even born in Y2K, but she was teaching me about the effects of Y2K, which I thought was funny. But she said, look, everybody thought the world was ending, but jobs were still there. The fix was done, whatever was needed to be done was done, and the world continued. So that was an interesting perspective. Now, there's going to be a lot of changes with AI for sure, but it's not the end of the world. So and I like the slide, Ichi, that you showed of, some of the jobs that are there, the existing jobs that you just need to update or accommodate AI with whatever you're doing. So I think that's good. One of the key things I was thinking is, all the issues you guys represented, the map with Kenya in the middle of Africa, the Oklahoma being out of place, that creates a new role. There's a new job of, an AI QA person for the company. So whatever we do, we need a QA person that goes in and verifies that, because AI is not going to get it 100% all the time. So, and some of these things are key functions within a company. You're not just going to let a machine decide and dictate everything. So that creates a new opportunity for somebody who's in QA, for example, that you go in, and your role is to kind of the final mile, just to make sure everything is correct. Things like even contracts with lawyers. So I was joking with my daughter about lawyers, but right now, a lot of contracts are being done by AI, right? A lot. But I don't know if you guys are aware, there was a lawsuit where somebody got sued because they discovered that AI had done a lot of the contracts. There was even a case when the lawyer had engaged AI to a lot of extent. So there's going to be that final mile where somebody is needed to verify and just check and make sure that things are good. So now, in terms of what I'm seeing for myself with clients is, so they're moving beyond saying we need AI. They're actually buying tools that already have AI. So meaning, it's not we need to decide or create AI within the system. The system already has AI. So Oracle is a good example. SAP is the same thing. So what's needed actually for a lot of companies right now, what I'm seeing and what we're talking is sit down and spend time and figure out how we're going to use AI, because it's not about just jumping in. A lot of people right now feel that they've been left behind and they're just jumping in, from individuals to companies, and not strategically spending time to think through what do I need AI for, what it's, and going back to the basics of what you're doing here, what is AI? Let's start from stage, from the initial stage, figuring out what is AI, how can we use AI, how does it align with the company mission, as opposed to just jumping in. I feel there's a lot of pressure for everyone to jump into AI, and people are not doing that. So, I use it a lot for emails, for example, basic stuff. I get emails, I ask AI, can you respond to this email? Before I hit send, the QA part, I have to read through, because I don't want the machine sending me stuff to somebody and they're in shock, like, what in the hell, Mark, did you send me? So, so I do that. There's prompts. I think one of the key things that's going to be important is how we train from a consumer part prompts, training on how to create prompts that will then help you with AI. I think that's a key area that a lot of people right now are just using it for basic stuff. But if you're able to use prompts, I think that's the killer thing about AI. That's all I have. Again, thanks guys for setting this up. I think this is great. And I missed the other one, but still learning. So I'm one of those. I'm better than those people that say, is it A1 or AI? A1 source.
Oh, Mark, that is so cool. Tell Bakela, you know what's funny? Actually, this is kind of funny, right? So there's this station V103 in the morning, right? So I'm listening to it, And then they have this lady who comes, they have this ad, she does what's called 1-800 truck wreck. So she comes, she says, we're attorneys for truck wreck. If a truck hits you, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
So she's been doing it for several years. But I think it was last week I heard her say, here at 1-800 truck wreck, our lawyers are trained to prosecute cases against those trucks that are autonomous, those cars that are Waymo. We have lawyers trained in AI or AI trained lawyers to be able to prosecute cases against autonomous vehicles. So to your point, right, is that, okay, this thing exists. How does that become an opportunity, a new job opportunity that's coming up, right? So it's interesting that if you allow yourself to adapt to this world, then you can create those audit jobs. I like that point you said about sort of like the last auditor, right? The chief AI auditor or whatever it is. Humans are so creative at creating roles for themselves. And more importantly, the business owners, right? Like you have these Duta, you're fitness fanatic, right? Like I feel bad for trainers, right? So a trainer comes, observes your movements, and then creates a fitness program for you. But now AI is doing that for you. It models your weight, your composition. In fact, there are some weights that have been manufactured, or some machines to do resistance based on how you're responding, right? Like then that becomes a business that someone can then use and make money off of. Which then brings me back to the whole thing about Kenyans in Kenya more than Kenyans here, and not the ones who have access to technology and who can learn these things that we're talking about, but those who have access to technology for use. But what I see, and again, I'm sorry for saying this, but what I see is a lot of people using AI for creative, here's a horse with monkey ears, right? And then send it back out and we have comments. How do we make that, how can we upskill that person so they can be able to feed their families? You know what I mean? Not just because this thing of content creators, sometimes it's a pet peeve for me. It's like, okay, yeah, you're creating content, but then, your family is suffering. So what can we do to bridge that gap for Kenyans who are not in Nairobi, who have a notion of AI for creative use? How can we help them monetize this and feed their families?
Is that for me?
Or
is everybody?
We'll start with you. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think the fact that they're doing that, what they're doing, is a good thing. Remember what you talked about, creativity. The fact that they figured out this tool, I can use it for this, is a good thing. I think so. They're already using AI, so we're not trying to teach them how to use AI. They've jumped into that. Is to teach them maybe how to completely benefit out of it, which is it's now the business side of things, and typically it should take the natural evolution of social media. If you have good content, it's gonna fight follow-up, and if you keep up with that, you eventually be able to leverage your follow-up base and all that. Depending on where you're putting it, things like YouTube with their partner programs, so that's where maybe the money can come from. But I think what I see as opportunity is especially for creative people is, today things like movies, they're produced by big media house, and I think we talked about it last time. I think AI has a real opportunity of literally democratizing movie production. Because the majority of movies is somebody wrote the script. It's not a true story, it's a script, but then the actors were real, unless it's a sci-fi or animations, and which I think of late majority of movies are either sci-fi or animation, and that means they're computer generated. And it took a lot of time, especially animation took a lot of time, because the animators actually, they were paid a lot of money. Some animators were places like in Kenya, because it's somebody literally doing a sketch, and then the sketch is animated and all that, and it's a very expensive production process. Now, computer generated image, like you see in sci-fi, it takes a lot of work as well. But essentially, we're already doing that. It's just that now you don't have to be, what is it called, the big movies for studio for sci-fi. That a guy in some rural somewhere in Sirisia in Western Kenya, with his creativity and access to proper tool, he can produce a well crafted movie. Of course, I don't think there's a capability for a video producing model to give you straight up a 60-minute worth of clip. So you'd have to do it the same way you do a movie, which they shoot a scene, one scene at a time, and then they piece it together. So they can do that. They can do that, and I can see an opportunity whereby some of these people will be producing really good content, a full movie that I'll sit down and watch, but it's actually AI generated. And he doesn't need Tyler Perry's studio to be able to do that. I mean, you saw Tyler Perry cancel an $800 million project when he saw the AI capability for producing movies. He said the studios are not going to be necessary anymore. Because you don't have to have people that you're taking to the actual mountain to shoot, on horses or, all those things. You just tell the AI, I want to show somebody riding on a horse and shooting, ballistic missile from a horse, That's the thing you want to create. So those opportunities are there. And I think the question is, how do we monetize that? For now, I think it has to basically use the social media framework that are, kind of basically building good content people follow automatically, and you build that. But if they do consciously and not do, think I'm just doing this one out there for people to laugh. If they deliberately trying to build a base, they can do that, because you have to do it. You have to try to create the followership, so that you build it and you start attracting money. YouTube at a certain level. I don't know whether you're doing that, which you should, because you want to be to a place where now you're getting to a critical mass, and they start paying you just for being there on YouTube, and that's where people make money. There's a guy that he does TikTok, some literally really funny Kikuyu. The guy, he's somewhere in Nyadaro. I mean, the thing that's so funny, they're sketches, like really funny, just the story that is so funny. And then you have to literally not just know Kikuyu, like the real deep Kikuyu to know it. Mark, I think I've shared a couple of those guys. And I look at that guy, I'm like, that's a guy who's somewhere in the middle of central Kenya, and he's producing this funny content that is extremely entertaining. And it's a matter of time that he's gonna get a following. And of course, because of the language he's using, so his addressable market is limited unless he translates it, which is now talking about the skills of monetization. So he can still post that thing, but then make sure it's translated into other language, because it's actually extremely funny, like really funny, So, but if you don't speak Kikuyu, you're not going to be able to enjoy it. But if you translate that, first of all, to Swahili and local languages and even other languages, then other people can be able to consume, and all of a sudden he has a bigger addressable market and he has a bigger following, and he can literally monetize that. I can see that. And he's not using AI for now. It just sketches he does and then does the video. And a guy like that, if he takes a hold of AI, he probably can do even more stuff.
So I had a quick question. Actually, if you don't mind, Ichi, yeah. So I had a question and actually a comment. So one other comment I was just going to say about AI, and I thought about this when I was talking about, again, with my kids, because I do think AI is a big deal. Is the how you avoid being dismal or negative about education, because education is still needed. I've seen some articles that actually there's some kids who are dropping out of school at Harvard, at other big schools and all that, because they feel AI is going to make their life meaningless. And you know, this generation they don't think like us when we were growing up. I mean, if you told your dad that you thought technology was going to make your degree meaningless, I mean, he'll beat you, go back to school, you know? He'll be like, that's nonsense. But it is actually a real thing, you know? So it brings up an interesting point. You know, are we looking at potentially down the road the end of the meaning of education? And I know that's big, because anything you need, you're gonna be able to just prompt and you get it. So why spend 4 years trying to figure all that crap out? So that's one thing, and it's a question. The other thing is, so with AGI, you know, we talked about AGI is kind of the next thing with AI, and Aichi, or you know, Kihomba, you guys are kind of the ex-gurus of this, but you know, what are your thoughts on that? Because they talk about artificial general intelligence now being the next thing that's as close, probably the closest it can be to human beings, right? Because it's not just generative or based on data or whatever. It's based on actually new data. The system actually assesses the new data and makes decisions based on all factors. And I mean, that's as close as you get to human beings. And I think that's where some of these kids are looking at it saying they're going to be on the other side. They're actually joining nonprofits to fight AI. So I don't know what your thoughts are.
I think even by shaking his head, he's very annoyed.
No, I'm not annoyed, but that not for profit to fight AI, that's not going to work. This is not a mosquito fight. This is not setting up non for profit to fight mosquito in Machakos. This is not going to work. AGI, I realize even in the last time we never talked about defined. AGI is one of the key concepts, like Mark said, it's the next level, artificial generalized intelligence. This is a level at which the machines are more intelligent than human beings. And the test it's called the Turing test, is that if a robot or a machine does something, you cannot tell that it was done by a machine. Okay. And you know, right now, if a machine produces, if AI produces a video, I most likely can tell that is generated by a AI or an image. You know, if you pay attention, you can actually tell somebody's text was actually generated by AI and all those kind of stuff. So we are not there yet, but that's the holy grail. That's what everybody's aiming for. That it is going to be such that the thing that we attribute to human being in so many areas that is done by a machine, and nobody, if you just ask a person and tell them, they will not be able to distinguish. There's some people who are saying we're already there on the basis that today, if you ask any LLM on any question, let's take a physicist, okay? You know, highly educated PhD in nuclear physics, or you know, whatever you want to call them, and an LLM, the LLM, and you pose question to them, you most likely going to find that LLM is going to be very good at answering the question than that PhD physicist. So the question is the computer already more intelligent than a human being? And I think that the thing right now is we're not there yet, but that's what they are aiming at. That is the goal, to get to AGI, artificial generalized intelligence. They thought it's a little bit far away, but I think they expect it to be attained in a couple of years. So,
yeah. I think so. I have a couple of views on what you said, Mark. You know, there's this study, we talked about it last week, which was where they compared physician and artificial intelligence chatbot, right? Responses to patients. So a patient is asking a question, they get a response from a physician. Patient is asking a question, they get a response from a chatbot. And which of those patients were most satisfied with the responses, right? Overwhelmingly, the chatbot responses were better, right? So I think people by nature adapt so quickly to these things that are coming up. I remember, you know, years ago, I mean, Mark, we've been here a long time, right? So I remember even in Cole, when we were talking about wireless, because I was a telecommunications management major, my thing was always copper and fiber optics are the way of the world, right? And people are saying, yeah, Wi-Fi. I'm like, no. I mean, who's gonna use Wi-Fi? Who's gonna, like, there's too many unknowns.
Yeah.
I mean, now what? Now even there's no set-top box. You buy a TV, yeah, online and streaming immediately. So there's an adaptability that humans are capable of in ways that I think they will be partners with the bots. Like we'll figure a way to coexist. I think for us, it's like us versus them. There's a generation that's going to be like, oh yeah, my nanny is a robot. So what? Like, that's life. I mean, I don't know a life of not, and they'll be like, you mean you used to go to work, come back, take care of me, cook food? Like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
Like, when did you have time for yourself? So there's going to be these AI natives for whom the coexistence with these machines will be there, right? So, my workmates came to Atlanta this week, and last night they sent me a picture. They're like, we rode in a Waymo. Oh my goodness, it's like the greatest thing ever, right? And that you start tracing back to before Waymo, obviously Uber. Before Uber, there was a taxis, right? And you think to yourself, at what point did it make sense for me to go stand outside? Just go stand outside, waiting for sort of like some yellow cab, put my hand up, you know what I mean? That cab keeps passing, right? So our mind has already adapted to that. That was so much work. So I think, Mark, we will get to a point where the coexistence, regardless of whether it's AGI or the next level beyond AGI. By the way, there is going to be levels beyond AGI, right? Will just become a part of life.
I was going to comment. Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, the issue that Mark is raising, that's actually very important, because I think that part of the reason why we're here is to talk about this kind of stuff. It's not just for us, especially us specifically, but also the fact that, we have kids that are either heading to college, we're going to be graduating college. They're going to be impacted more by AI than we are. So this is a very valid conversation, because their world is actually going to be extremely different.
And said Kilmer, sorry to interrupt. And I just want to be clear. I think a lot of these kids, they've crossed the threshold of AI being there. I think like the kids I was saying quitting Harvard and all the schools. I mean, they're not quitting to fight like AI. I mean, AI is going to happen, but it's the ethical components of AI, like AI doing a lot of things that they feel is humans that should be doing. But anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah. And I think that is a battle that's raging across. I mean, there's one of the guy that was instrumental in writing the early ChatGPT quit, on the basis of disagreement on, if you think that they're moving too fast, the security is not there, or the safety is not there yet. So I think, the same thing with the ethics and the fear about the AI. There's some people who, as you'd expect, taking completely different view on that. But what I was gonna say is that the labor force, and maybe by the end of this one, there are a couple of podcasts that folks need to listen. One of them is by the guy that's known as the grandfather of AI. Is a British Canadian guy that came up with the neural network. The things you're saying is the foundation of the current AI, is the engine behind the AI as we know it today. He used to work for Google. I have to remember his name. And then there's also an interview with this other gentleman that also worked for Google. Very, very, very informative conversation. This is on the Diary of CEO podcast. Extremely informative conversation by insiders. I mean, people who have been there building those systems, and they're talking about what is coming. So one of the things that the funny thing is, those interviews they're done separately, but you can see the convergence of their view, especially on the impact on the labor force. The fact that the labor force is going to be dislocated and displaced, and literally AI is going to be taking over. The Google guy, I think the former Google executive, he's talking about 12 to 15 years period for and his notion is that there will be this dystopia phase of disorder, and then end up with utopian space where now everybody is all happy because everything is being done by AI. You don't wake up to do the work. You wake up to go to the park, walk your dog, and go to a spa that is also maybe done by. Although I don't think you'd be walking your dog if there's AI to do that. But it's very interesting. But the part I wanted to talk about, which I believe is what's going to happen, is the intermediate phase is going to be what they call it the augmented AI. The augmented intelligence. And essentially what we're going to do is human being, we're going to be working with this AI as tools. The way we are doing today, we are augmenting the work we do, the conversation we just had right now, that you write, you need to do a report and help you be productive, be more accurate, be all those. So you're literally augmenting your intelligence, so it's just that it's going to be increasingly more. In the factory or in the warehouses, there might be just one manager there relying on 50 robots, that are doing extremely well. But at some point, human beings will almost have no role to do because AI is completely capable of doing every single task that we do. But like we said last time, any one of us that is pretending to predict we know what's going to happen is lying. So even those guys, they'll tell you that's their speculation, that's their hallucination of what they think is going to happen. But I think one of those things is going to materialize for sure. I think it is going to be disruptive, and I think that's the things for people to be aware of. If you look at the story of Blockbuster and Netflix, the Blockbuster was in denial for so many times that the Netflix is a threat to them until they're no longer there. And I think for us is not to be in denial that this is a serious disruptive technology, because it is.
Yeah, I think I want to bring this up. Go ahead, Dita.
Yeah, I just want to add to Kihumba's point that, of course, this is going to be it's going to be very disruptive, especially to the older generation. And excuse my voice. It's disruptive to the older generation because, of course, they are very scared. They don't know how to use AI, so they are going to be slow in getting acquainted to this AI world. And then, did I say it's very intimidating?
Yes.
There's one thing that we're always going to want to do, especially the older generation, and there's something I have not done. Ichi, you mentioned something like taking a Waymo versus catching a yellow taxi, which I haven't done it yet in New York. Those, they call them medallion taxis. That is something the older generation is just prone to doing without even thinking, oh, let me just get a Waymo, because they have to, download the Waymo app. That is intimidating to the older generation. I have to, you already have Uber, but then now for Waymo, you have to download that. So yeah, I just think the AI is very disruptive and intimidating to the older generation. But I think with time and if people accept it, I think it's a good place where people are going. But it's gonna be, I think the younger generation are going to get on board with it more than the older generation. That's just what I think.
So, Dita, I take offense to you calling us the older generation because
we are. I'm sorry, we're there. Too bad. We're there. We are getting there, and we are just getting there.
I remember one time I was teaching, and I was telling the students, I was very honest with them. I told them my fear of using Google Chrome, because I was like, this thing follows me everywhere, and and then saving passwords on the browser and all that. And they asked me why, and I'm like, no, but and they're like, no, we don't. Like, for them, it's almost, I'm sure most of you, I know some of you pretty well, most of you remember the time when you used to go into a bank. The only way to transact in a bank was walking in to present your check, write the deposit slip, or whatever it was. Then we obviously went to ATMs, Standard Chartered. I was one of the first users in NAI to have the ATM card. I remember that, or Barclays, one of them, right? But I remember this time when Bank of America had this ad where they said, all you have to do is put your check into the ATM and it will process it. You won't have to get an envelope right in front of the envelope, your routing number, your account number. And then it said, oh, by the way, this thing can count cash. Like in my head, that was, it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense for me to migrate to that point where I feel I'm no longer in control. So here's my point. I think a lot of what we're grounding our resistance to AI is the losing of control, where we feel we have this perception that we have control of things, how we write our performance reviews, how we're going to walk our dog, but then suddenly this thing is going to start taking control of those things. Now, Kiumba, I love what you said. There's none of us who has a crystal ball who can say what's an outcome. We can think about what it's going to do for us, but what's the outcome 20 years from now? So if I ground us back to today, here's what I'm saying to you all of you who are working, all of people who ask you, what do I need to do? The Kenyans, anyone who listens, we have to create a culture of learning. And there's a lot of learning that a lot of companies are putting out there for us. So for us at work, we have a lot of internal training programs. We do this G2G, where basically we knowledge share. So Duta, if you have found a way to utilize AI for something, for your job function, the next thing is for you to teach someone to become the, AI guru teacher at your job, right? That becomes a role that's defined for you. Liz, the same thing. If you're saying the Gava is not yet hip to using AI, learn all these things so that you can be the one who can be conducting sessions for learning sessions, right? AI for us in our data centers, like you saw the billions of dollars we spend, we then go in and talk to the local community. And Virginia is an interesting one, where we have virginiahasjobs.com/AI. And that's where Virginia is actually promoting the people in Virginia to learn AI. But more than that, if you go to grow.google, grow.google, put that, you'll see all these free AI courses that can help you, to Kihumba's point, just help you learn a little bit about AI. But for me, I think that the bottom line is you have to focus on adaptability and lifelong learning. Because as soon as you learn this generative AI, there'll be the next AI thing. As soon as you learn prompt engineering, there'll be something else. We are never gonna stop. So the SMS, your skill set, you have to upskill in some way. Your mindset, you have to loosen control and let AI be your partner for a little bit. And when AI decides to walk the dog or take care of your kid, be okay with it. And then in this environment where people are scared of losing their jobs, you have to figure out how to increase your value worth and articulate it. Because when someone comes and says AI is now able to do what you were doing, you best be able to be ahead because you know a little bit about AI, but you best be able to figure out how to articulate your value worth so you can stay. Because, now from sourcing to recruiting to account management, people are losing jobs. But I'll go back to this and I'll say 2,621 jobs. And Kihumba, just to be clear, what I did out of the 2,621 jobs, I just focused on data center. I put a data center search and said, give me jobs that are related to data center. There's other jobs outside of the data center, from account management to people, sales engineers, like all those people who don't even know what a computer chip is, but those jobs are there. So there is tremendous opportunity to upskill in these areas rather than and I don't want it to sound so bad, rather than spending all this money to learn AI. If you want to learn the intricacies of AI if you're not that person. If you're a lawyer, you're a lawyer. Michaela is in law school. I will go, drop out and do AI. Sorry, I'll say one more thing. I'm really, this is really interesting to me. So, responsible AI ethics. Several years ago, a lot of companies bidded for contracts with Agava to use AI for different things, including surveillance, things like that. And a number of companies, people in a number of those companies stood up and said, no, this is not what AI was built for. So, Mark, I understand. As a matter of principle, there's some people, as a matter of principle, no, we're not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yes, you can hold your position there, or you can figure out how to then use maybe surveillance technology for good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's almost like, and I think this is the discussion we have to have with our friends, people who are scared, is to say, okay, how can I reframe it to, let me learn it so that I can actually fight those people who are doing evil.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Instead of using AI to commit fraud, use AI for fraud detection.
Right.
The kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's reframing that we can use to help people. But anyway, my bottom line here was there are jobs that are coming, skills that are essential for adapting in an AI-driven world. And that's what we need to focus on. So we're at 11, but Kihumba, I'll give you last word, but anyone ask questions. I know that a few people joined. Do you have any questions? Maybe I can stay here forever, but I want to be I want to be sensitive to those who have to get 8 hours of sleep. Some of us survive on 5.
Now, I'm proud I'm here. My bedtime is 8 o'clock, so it's because of you guys, you two guys.
Mark, we could clearly tell one eye is closed already.
Let's see. Let me do roll call. Mushunu, Eva, Sessa, Liz, Movie Family, thanks for joining. Duta, any final thoughts? And also, what would you like to see next? Kihumba loves AI. He can talk AI every morning, evening, afternoon. We can bring him back to talk more. What else do you want to know?
Hi, this is Eva. Oh, I guess just a comment, just based on this session. First of all, just thank you so much. This has been very eye-opening, great. But the one thing I know for me, I have people on my team who are struggling with AI, when they're thinking about their jobs will be replaced. So, and that's normal, but I think also it's also just that mindset as well, how you reframe that. Yes, it's a powerful tool, but I think people, us, we're the ones who give it purpose, right? So it will keep changing, things will continue changing, but we also need to, how can we make sure we are growing together with AI, not apart? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So thank you for this.
Absolutely. And I think you are right. As a leader, you have to, in my world, it's all about reframing, right? And setting example, right? Like if you show them and creating that like learning culture, like one, a suggestion as an example is to say, okay, let's have we used to call them brown bag, right? Lunch brown bag, and let's talk about how we use AI, or invite someone from the engineering group to talk about how they use AI. I think as people start becoming more comfortable that AI is not a dirty word, right? Then they can start even coming up with ideas about how to make work more productive. They start dreaming up things that can help the organization move forward. So then you as a leader start leveraging it in some way. So I think it all starts with maybe even you as a leader expressing your vulnerability and saying, look, I'm as scared of AI as you are, but I attended this session, learned from people about what AI is. let's talk about it. Let's do a brown bag and talk about AI, something like that as an example.
Yeah, can I make a quick comment on that? I mean, this thing is real and it's happening, and I think, especially here in the US, the biggest driver for this is going to be certain corporation. You know, the corporations are there to maximize profit for their shareholders. Yeah.
Mhm.
And to the extent that they have a tool that allows them to cut costs, they'll go for it anytime. And I worry this transition may be as bad, if not worse, as the business process outsourcing that led to a lot of jobs, especially the manufactured job from the US. I don't think people, when it started, you don't realize, you know, because you started one job at one factory at a time. But and then you know your factory get closed, you move across the street to the other factory that's still there, you get employed. But then after 2 years, that closes, you move the other side of the street, and then eventually there's no factory to go to. You know what I mean? So the loss of job to AI is going to be gradual. It's going to be what do I call it? Not industry based. I guess certain jobs are going to go fast, and you can clearly see that. You know, call centers are clear target at this point. The other day I called a hotel, you know, and you can clearly tell that it's not, you know, I could tell it's an AI, but it's so good. It's talking like a person. You know, there you'd call, and then they did, you know, they used to have that old automated for, you know, press this one, you know, and they just say, this is Ajara, you know, what can I help you with? And I knew that straight up, that's an AI, but it's so good. And then, you know, you say what you want. There's no for reservation, for restaurant, press this one, that nonsense doesn't exist anymore. It's natural language conversation, which you remember natural language things we talked about. So things like that, calling your doctors, you know, people who are right there just to schedule your doctors, that's not going to be necessary anymore. You know,
Yeah.
AI should be able, you call, they're like, what do you want, which doctors, you know, they go to their calendar, figure that one out. So I think maybe what we need to figure out is people tracking which wave is coming fast. But gradually, it's going to start with certain skills. The moment the tool is perfected to outsource that, the moment front desk AI is good enough, a lot of companies are automatically going to convert. Okay.
Yeah, and I think, Kuma, to your point about this
You
is
know?
going to be bigger than outsourcing of jobs. I mean, this for sure. I mean, you're hearing things like for factories, there's a concept of, I think, lights out factories. You know, factories where you don't need any lights, for example, because it's everything from beginning to end. The processes are run by machines.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already there. So if you think of a manufacturing plant like that maybe previously had 1,000 employees, and like Tesla, I mean, most of their factories are lights out factories. I mean, everything is done by robots, machines. But in terms of jobs, you know, some of the numbers are scary. They're very scary in terms of, you know, you're not talking about 1 million, 10 million. You're talking about 100 million plus jobs affected. I mean, that's huge. I mean, that is humongous. So I think everyone needs to be ahead. Our kids, ourselves, even. I mean, the technology we know is. I think Ichi or Kiomba, you guys mentioned that. You know, what we know today may not be, you know, relevant in a year or two. So, like, we constantly have to be ahead of the curveball. And yeah, so we just need to be ahead of what's coming and what's changing.
So I just posted the 2 podcasts I was talking about. They specifically talk about, you know, some of this, and these are like real resources. I mean, these are insiders. These are people who know the capability of these tools. And the conversation about the jobs and what's going to happen is deep, you know. So that what they're saying is speculation, to be honest with you, but it's one of those things that, you know, instead of having a head in the sand, you know, just knowing this one is good enough, because you can, when things are happening, you have a perspective. You know, you can now start putting things together. Otherwise, you just be reacting to a shadow on the wall, and not realizing what's the giant on the other side that is casting that shadow because you don't know, But I think once we get aware, so when you start seeing things, we're able to attribute to some forces that we knew were coming, So
I think, go ahead, Liz.
So I have a question. So as far as adopting and implementing AI, it sounds like it's the big corporations that are adopting and implementing the technology. What about the small to medium-sized companies? What are the barriers of entry? And I think that also talks to your to what you're concerned about, Ichi, about people in Kenya adopting AI. What is needed to adapt AI? There's training needed, right?
Actually, there's no training needed.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, when you think about, I love the way you framed it, right? Barriers of entry. I think it's a bigger barrier of entry for corporations, big corporations, than for small businesses, right? We live in an era where the barrier of entry for cloud-based services is so low. Like, let's say, Liz, you've had an idea for a long time about a business, start of a business. Kiumba told you last week, go to Gemini and ask it to write a business proposal for you, to implement all the things that could go wrong. It can even help you generate ideas. I want a hairdressing salon. Okay, what does that look like in the state of Georgia, in the Cobb County? How many people can it serve? How can I market? You don't need to, unfortunately, Akina Leo Fire, in case you're listening, above zero, you don't need marketing agencies anymore, right? The AI can do the search optimization for you, can tell you whether your website is good. So I think for small businesses, you actually are at a better place than big businesses. And in fact, I would encourage, if we are scared of losing our jobs, perhaps one thing to think about is, how do we exit the workforce gracefully and start running our businesses that leverage AI? So if I wanted to be a university lecturer, maybe I have to start learning, how do I get lead generation using AI? How do I figure out what courses? How do I create a robot that can be the person teaching the course? I think that therein lies that opportunity for new business owners and small business owners to actually leverage AI. But that's my thought. I'm curious, Kehumba, Mark, I mean, am I wrong?
Yeah, I think you're on that's my belief. I honestly believe that AI actually lowers the barrier for small businesses on some stuff. Actually, when I started kind of, like I said, coming back to AI side of things, my focus is actually to develop tools that are meant literally to help small businesses. The reason I make this argument is, if you take a small business, business processes that are supposed to improve efficiencies, especially those who are software driven, and they're based on the traditional software system. They're very expensive things to implement. You have to buy a license from a big software provider, and all those kind of stuff. Today, you can write a workflow that's AI driven, that can do the work that would have taken a big software to do that for small business. We just talked about, a customer rep. If you're a physical therapist that has a clinic and you have to employ somebody who normally take appointment. It's so easy to write an agent to handle that for you accurately, and using natural language processing. You don't need big databases, you don't need big software stack to do that. All you're doing is a small mid layer, and then you're using LLM as the reasoning agent, and it handles all that. So I think AI lowers the barrier for entry for some of these business processes that would have costed those companies a lot of money, and they don't have them because they don't want to invest in that. They don't want to invest in buying big software, so they can easily implement those tools. And I think that will probably become very, very common. I think right now it's them being aware that they can do that, and not yet, the comfortable, being comfortable about it. But I think it's gonna be easy, and save money. A restaurant is gonna come to make an order on a restaurant. Even going to a restaurant, you don't need waiters to specifically wait until you're seated down, and then they come take your order. You can conversate with the AI, and they can read the entire menu and possibly maybe just post, the order. And I think places like in Kenya, in China, they have robots that deliver the food. So you can clearly see in those. I mean, one of the biggest struggle for restaurant owner is just getting employee. So you don't have to have waiters. Is that maybe you just have a computer at the desk and they can conversate that with that and order.
No, I was just sorry. I was just going to say that. I mean, that's an interesting question about barriers of entry for. And I think Kiwamba's, sorry, you actually touched on a key point. I think it's awareness that a lot of people don't know that those barriers are actually, as to say, that they're actually either negligible or not even for small business.
Yeah.
What I deal with big companies, and I think the problem big companies have is they're still in the strategic, trying to figure out how do you deal with AI. Now, and I'll give you a good example of those barriers for the small business, which I think, by the way, and it's a good question. It actually opens up a lot of opportunities for a lot of people that go educate businesses, small businesses, on how you can use AI. It's actually not that complicated. And I think that's a huge opportunity. So it's a great question. I have a friend of mine in Kenya. He's created a startup company, and he when I went to Kenya in April, March, April, he was very excited to tell me, Mark, listen, man, this, and by the way, unfortunately for he uses Grok. He's a big fan of Grok. But he was like, listen, Mark, I've been using this device for my apps, blah, 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 blah. Contractors in India, I don't need them anymore. I did this thing on my own, for a week. I didn't sleep for 3 days, and I figured out everything. And then my lawyer here, who charges $300 an hour for this contract, geez, I did everything. And, instead of spending 50 hours on whatever, not 20, 30 hours on this guy, all he had to do was spend maybe 2 or 3 hours to just review the contract that he created for AI. So he's a very good example. He's a very small business, but he's figured out how to do AI. He's in Kenya, not even here. So I think it's a good question about the small business. I mean, and I think a lot of it, Kiwamba, as you said, is awareness that, that stuff is that. One final point, and then I'm going to shut up. I think for one of your sessions, maybe it is maybe interesting is thinking about that business component of AI. Like, what are the opportunities that we can think about as Kenyans with this whole AI thing moving forward? So is it some things that folks can do on the data center side? I mean, you showed us the jobs and all that, but what are some of the opportunities that either people can leverage? I think this training component that you said, I think Liz or Eva, so the whole thing of some of those small businesses, we see $100 billion being spent by Google or whatever on data centers and whatever. What is 0.05% that people on this call can actually leverage and just take advantage of? So I think that's an interesting discussion to have also, just to people can brainstorm, and I don't know, just food for thought.
Love it.
I definitely second that. Yeah.
Liz, I hope that answered your question. Yeah. All right. So 11:17. We never stop with this conversation. So Eve Mushunu Duta. Let's see who's still here. Sessa is still here, and movie family. I don't know whether it's Wandia or I see you, Anthony. So any final thoughts? This is not going to be the last conversation. We can have these conversations virtually, but happy to come back here if needed. But hopefully this was at least the start of getting to understand, embrace, enjoy AI. As a reminder, when you use any of them, tell them sorry, thank you, say please. because when they do come back and they start picking out who they're going to kill, they might they might remember you and say, "Yeah, Kehumba was very polite to me."
But Sam said not to do that.
Yeah.
There's ChatGPT, it's OpenAI CEO said not to do that because it costs them a lot of computing power.
Oh yes, I heard. By the way, I did hear about that. Saying thank you actually costs a lot of a lot of money. Thank you. Yeah, Cesar, thank you certainly for joining. All right, guess we'll. I I see you. I see you. I see you, brother. I see you. Kehumba, thank you for pushing us to do this.
Yeah, sure. And I think Ishi, I think we need. I know you and I have been. I'm actually excited about this, and like I've said, I think we need to pursue this beyond conversation, basic conversation. This is something very important. There's so many things to be talked about, and I think we need to map it out. I'm starting to think about how this needs to be rolled out. This training we need to conduct for our young kids, not just those in Kenya. We have kids here that were going to colleges and they're going to get out of school with computer science and they're going to be surprised and frustrated that they're not getting jobs that were easily coming 3 years ago, because again, awareness is very important. And I think trying to tell them, yeah, don't get frustrated. It's because you're looking at the wrong place. This is now where things are, start looking on this side. But also in Kenya, I have a lot of faith in the young people in Kenya. The question is, do they have the rest of the ecosystem there to support them? There's so much that need to be done. When you look at that stack, for it to work, the entire stack has to be there, So, and I think, and then some of it is government, some of it is corporations, some of it is individuals, some of it is a collection of individuals, but trying to figure out how can we actualize it. It should be the next. So we'll continue the conversation. Figure out how to keep talking about this.
Yeah, I hate to say this, but I think we're going to assign ourselves some work. Mark mentioned the 0.005%, and that really opened up my eyes and ears to, maybe perhaps something to think about at some point is to actually do a very intentional, 2-day summit in ATL. I mean, we have Tech Week, involved in Tech Week and figure out how can we, Kenyans and Kenyaricans, be part of that 0.05. I mean, the billions that are being spent are incredible, right? And then the other thing, and not for discussion today, but another day, is I'm curious, when I see that Google is spending so much money as a Microsoft, AWS, etc., it's not the Gava spending the money, right? It's obviously there's incentives to them spending the money, but they're investing this money and it's impacting positively a lot of people in the community. I'm curious how the Kenyan landscape works, because my limited lens of Kenya is everyone asks, how is the Gava going to help us in this AI? So I see Mark is very upset. He's just shaking his head. I don't know. I don't necessarily. I'm not naive to think that Kenya acts like the US, but it feels like the direct investment from these big providers is what is the means for driving AI skills, essential skills for AI-driven world. So I don't know how that conversation starts with people in Kenya. Yeah. All right. Okay, Kiumba, thank you. Mark, Liz, Eva, Cesar, Mushunu, Duta, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for holding. This was wonderful. Thank you. You guys rock.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.